Hello again, and welcome back to the Uncultured Cinematic Universe. Here we discuss your favorite movies of all time, as well as the ones that got away. We look at classic and iconic films from two perspectives, that of the diehard fan, and that of the uncultured who's never seen it before, until now.
Right now.
We're your hosts, Justin and Joe, here to act as your guides, playing part as both the fellow enthusiast and the ignorant and uncultured. Special announcement for this episode, Justin.
Yeah.
As of now, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts,
That's
all
true.
under the name Uncultured Cinematic Universe. So
Yes,
look us up.
baby.
I don't know how you're listening to us right now if you're not already on one of those three. Today we are nearing the end of September, about to enter that most spookiest of months. And to celebrate that, we'll be throwing the third switch and talking about the 1974 film Young Frankenstein.
Oh man, Joe, I can't wait. This is my season.
Yes.
It is the season of the witch,
Mhm.
and I am said witch. So
First time I ever met you, I clocked to you as a Halloween bro.
Really good.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
glad I was able to portray that, out into the world as accurately as possible. So yeah, so I'm so glad we're doing this. Starting the season, the spooky season with the classic, which is something I've never seen before. I'd always
Mhm.
wanted to, and we'll talk about it later. How like I, uh, was familiarized with it and what I knew. But yeah, I'm glad this is number one on
Yeah, I'm
spooky
interested
season.
to hear how much you knew about this movie going into it, because
Oh yeah,
it's definitely a classic, but it's older, and Mel Brooks definitely has a lot of famous movies in his little repertoire.
absolutely.
So let's talk first impressions. What did you think of Young Frankenstein?
Um, I thought it was fun. It was really fun. So
Mhm.
I'm familiar with Mel Brooks and his work, so I knew what kind of movie I was in for, but I didn't know to the extent that this is a capital P parody movie. And so like this is not Mel Brooks. Well, it is Mel Brooks going off the rails, but it's also like touching on the 1930 whatever the 1930s movie, the original uh, Frankenstein movie.
There's
Um,
like five of them in the 1930s and 1940s that he's
yeah,
all parodying.
which is great. And I had no idea that's what it was. So it was a visual treat. It was more like legit a horror movie to me in some aspects, with really good hard hitting comedy throughout.
Hmm.
And then, of course, by the time you get to the latter half, the silly wheels come off the wagon. It just goes wacky.
Yeah, this is kind of part of a trifecta of Mel Brooks movies that I grew up with. So I've never seen Blazing Saddles to this day, which is
Ooh,
kind of like one of his better known ones. But growing up, we didn't have like cable TV, so we just watched a lot of like movies and DVDs and stuff from the library.
yeah.
And our library in our small mountain town up in Blairsville uh, kind of stocked a lot of like 70s and 80s comedy movies. So that's
That's
uh,
really
where
specific.
where I know it's where I had a lot of my background, just growing up in the types of movies that we watch. So we saw this, we saw other Mel Brooks films. We watched the Pink Panther movies a lot. Did you ever see any of those with Peter Sellers?
Not that one. I did see the one with that they redid in the
It's on the Steve
90s.
Martin
Steve Martin. Yeah, that's
one. Yeah. So my history with Mel Brooks is like when he's like really leaning heavily into the parody films. So he starts out with stuff like Blazing Saddles, and this is actually this Young Frankenstein movie is actually in the same year as Blazing Saddles.
right.
So we watched Young Frankenstein. It's probably the more kid appropriate one of the two.
Is it?
Um, what
I'd
can I
beg
say?
to differ.
And then we also watched we owned, I'm pretty sure, Spaceballs and Robin Hood Men in Tights. So those were like the three
Yeah,
big Mel Brooks movies that we grew up on.
that's awesome.
Um, all of which are very specifically parodies of
Yeah,
other movies.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So this one was great, and I'm so glad I've like rounded out my Mel Brooks, uh, playing card, trading cards. Like I got the stamp. Like I've now seen Young Frankenstein, and one thing that I noted is that I could start to see the seeds being planted of the future films being
mhm.
paid off, like specifically, Men in Tights and the producers and some other stuff that he did later. But like you can see him start to kind of play with some of those things, and it's really cool. I love that.
Oh, I
Um,
have like a specific note around that, like how how he plays with like inconsistencies in characters, especially with like Igor's hump and
yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
which which actually started out as like a joke by the actor playing Igor, but he kept it in. And then you also see that later in uh, Robin Hood Men in Tights. I don't know if you've ever seen
King
it, but like
with King Richard, yeah, and the
oh,
mole, yeah.
Paul just moves around his face throughout the movie, and he
I
never.
immediately picked up on that, and I was like, "Oh my god, that is amazing! That's clever. I love this. This is great." So hey, so before we dig in any deeper, let's go ahead and pop on this trailer. This is great. I've already watched this, and you're gonna love it, Joe.
Mhm.
So here's I don't know if it's the original trailer, but it's about the same time. So we'll see. Here we go. Trailer for Young Frankenstein.
It's coming from the deep, dark recesses of the mind of Mel Brooks. I love him. Young Frankenstein.
Life, you hear me? Give my creation life!
Sky means business.
Starring Gene Wilder as Dr. Frankenstein.
That's Frankenstein.
Peter Boyle as the monster. Marty Feldman as Igor.
My grandfather used to work for your grandfather.
I'm sure we'll get along splendidly. Oh,
Cloris Leachman as Frau Blucher. And Madeline Kahn as Elizabeth.
What are you going to do to me? I'm not afraid of you.
Kill the monster!
See Mel Brooks' Young Frankenstein.
yes, I think we could all use a good laugh.
But don't see it alone. Don't miss Young Frankenstein, personally directed by Mel Blazing Saddles Brooks, in black and white. No offense.
I love that. He did the voiceover. That's amazing.
So you can already tell from the trailer that they're trying to kind of pay homage to some of these older black and white horror films, and the he throws in the Blazing Saddles bit. Like I said, like Blazing Saddles released like 9 months before this film.
Right, yeah.
And I think Gene Wilder is actually in that movie.
Hmm.
And apparently he and Gene Wilder just like got together in a hotel for a bit and just started writing the screenplay for this one.
I love
Just because they were both interested in it. And it's kind of crazy because like when you think of Gene Wilder, he's obviously the standout for me in this film. He's one of the things that I think of most when I think of this movie.
that. Yeah.
And this is actually like just based off of my own movie watching history, this is the Gene Wilder performance that I think of most when I think of him. Whereas a lot of people would think of obviously like Willy Wonka, right?
Yep, that's me. Yeah, that's my cornerstone of Gene Wilder. He is Willy Wonka to me. So seeing him
Mhm.
in Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, like now I can a more complete picture.
No,
Um,
this is kind of the iconic Wilder performance for me, and I my favorite part about it is just like how straight faced yet unhinged he is in this.
Unfucking hinged. He goes for it in every scene he is in.
Just he'll
And
start at 0, go up to infinity, and then go back down to 0.
yeah. And that's something I can really appreciate, like he obviously he carries the movie with how balls to the wall crazed he is. From that opening scene in the school in the lecture hall or whatever, stabbing his leg with the scalpel and playing it off perfectly. I
He's-
loved it.
he's trying to maintain this air as like some sort of like renowned scientist, but it's implied that he's kind of conning them as well because
Yeah.
he's like paying off the patient that
Yeah. I was like, okay, so he's a little sketchy.
he's kind of a scumbag the whole time.
Yeah. So let's jump back for a second. I had mentioned in previous episodes I've wanted to do this. Wanted to do a specialized cocktail for whichever film we're talking about, and I finally did it. I didn't send you a recipe or how to make it because this is just off the cuff. But this is
listeners, the recipe will be made available as part of the description of this episode.
Yeah, we'll do a behind the scenes Patreon only, patron only kind of thing.
$50.
This is hot apple cider, the shot of spiced rum. I'm calling it the sweet mystery of life.
Oh,
It's
wow.
You drink it. And,
How is it?
it's so good. It's delicious. It's exactly what you need on a blustery late September day.
And it is getting
such
a
as
little
today.
windy and cold out, which I love.
This is great. It's absolutely set the mood for spooky season. But let me go back to some of my general musings on the movie. So, big time fog budget, big time spiderweb budget. And I really dug that it had that legit 1930s look to it. I had my brain had a hard time reconciling with itself that this movie came out in the 70s, but it's made to look like it was one of the 30s originals. Like it's black and white. And I thought it was a really neat touch, a really neat look.
Yeah. It's got old timey music. Whenever it shows a wide landscape shot or something like that, it's clearly like a painting.
Yeah.
That they're just filming. There's
is
lightning
awesome.
and thunder going off in every scene, regardless of whether or not it's raining.
So that's Transylvania. That's a little bit of meteorology for you. Transylvania, notorious for bad storms year round, regardless.
It's meteorological wonder.
It is. Yeah.
Let me give you some film stats real quick.
Yeah, hit
and then
me.
I'm gonna make you do the plot description.
Okay. I forgot we do that. Shit. Okay. Right.
We need to settle on like the time limit for that because I think it's harder than we both think it is.
Yep.
All right. So Young Frankenstein, directed by Mel Brooks, as we've been talking about, starring Gene Wilder, Doyle, Cloris Leachman, Terry Garr, Kenneth Mars, and Madeline Kahn. Released in December of 1974, famously in black and white. Made $86 million, which I'm sure was great at the time compared to its budget.
You know what? I want to know like what that is in today's dollars. I imagine that's nothing to sneeze at. 86 million.
Look up 1974 inflation and then type in 86 million while I finish this up.
Yep.
The movie was nominated for 2 Oscars, most notably for screenplay. People thought this movie was funny. And it inspired the song Walk This Way by Aerosmith, based off of the scene where they're walking down the stairs and Igor goes, walk this way, and then he follows him down the stairs with a hump.
I loved that gag. I thought that was played really well.
Oh, this movie is just 100% gags. It's just every scene is quotable and has a gag in it.
Yeah. Okay, so real quick. 1974 to 2022, 86 million. The value of $86 million from 1974 to 2022. It's equivalent to about $516 million.
Oh my God.
It's a lot.
So if this came out today, this would have made $500 million.
Yep.
People enjoyed this movie.
I would say so. It's safe to say.
I would say just like knowing what I know about Mel Brooks's filmography and his career, this was one of the high points, obviously after Blazing Saddles. And then his parody films tended to get reviewed lower and lower following this, even though both Spaceballs and Men in Tights, I believe, have developed a sort of cult status.
Absolutely. Yes.
I would say.
Yeah.
Special place in my heart in particular.
Same.
And then he made like a Dracula movie that no one saw.
Was that the one with Eddie Murphy, or is that different?
No, it's got
it's Leslie Nope. No.
Leslie Nope, not Leslie Mann. Fuck, what's his name? Leslie Nielsen
Leslie Nielsen of Naked Gun
of
fame.
Naked Gun.
Yep.
Uh,
We
all
got
right,
there. We got there.
we figured that out. All right. So, given that you have seen this film,
I have.
I'm going to give you. I think we settled on 2 minutes
Yeah,
to
that feels good.
describe the plot of this film, and
Yeah.
this is somewhat of a simpler plot than, say, like Pulp
Pulp
Fiction,
Fiction,
which
yeah.
was a nightmare to describe,
Mhm.
which I thought I could do in a minute, which is insane.
Idiot.
Um, okay. So, Justin, are you ready to
I'm ready.
describe the plot of Young Frankenstein in 2 minutes?
In 2 minutes. Yep.
All right. Your time starts now.
Young Frankenstein opens on Mr. Young Frankenstein, or Frankenstein. He's trying to distance himself from the tainted past of his grandfather, Victor von Frankenstein, in Transylvania. So he is a professor, doctor, that kind of thing, trying to make a name for himself. But he finds out that he is now heir to his grandfather's estate in Transylvania. So what does he do? He picks up and he moves over there. He meets his lab assistant, Igor, who his grandfather also worked for his grandfather. Fun connection there. So he moves in, he meets his beautiful lab assistant, Inga, and they start getting to work. Almost immediately, he stumbles upon his grandfather's work, and he's like, you know what, I'm going to try it. I'm going to do it. So what do? They dig up a recently dead man, and they start to experiment on him, and he's gets a brain. He wants one, Hans Drucker, but Igor drops it, so he gets another one, and it's abnormal. It's bad. So he turns it on. It actually works. He does the experiment, and the monster lives. But he's a little angry because he's got the abnormal brain. So the monster escapes. They try to catch him. They bring him back. Then the villagers catch wind, and then they're like, we need to go make sure that he's not doing experiments. But he is doing experiments. The monster escapes again. He meets Gene Hackman in the woods. And then they capture him again. Then he says, I need to show this off to my fellow colleagues, and they do a song and dance number, but then someone makes the monster mad. He gets caught. They break him out. He comes back home. He transfers his consciousness into the monster's consciousness to quell his rage. And then he also gets his dick in the end, I think, or something like that. They trade dicks. And everyone lives happily ever after. The end. Young Frankenstein. Scene.
It's very confusing what happened at the end, dick-wise. Yeah, you were able to summarize that plot rather concisely, but we are no longer friends because you managed to do it without mentioning Madeline Kahn at all. And
she was thrown in there.
The standout performances of this film.
She was thrown in.
Yeah, so I love that you touched on in your plot description the scene with the brain, because that's actually one of my favorite scenes in the film. Is Igor is tasked with going to find. First of all, Transylvania apparently has like a brain lab.
Yeah,
in their town square. Where you can basically just like go in and steal a brain. So he's supposed to go and find this like dead genius's brain. He drops it. It's scattered across the floor. Then he panics and picks
just abnormal brain.
Picks an abnormal brain that's labeled like "do not use."
My favorite part of that scene is the beginning, because they come to the door where he breaks in. And it's like, all drop-offs must be made by 5 p.m. Any drop-offs, please drop brain in Dropbox. It's so funny. It's so weird.
And then, I mean, obviously the brain goes into the monster, and he realizes. And so Gene Wilder takes him aside, and he's like, Igor, just a quick question for you. What brain ended up in there? And then the classic line of Abby something.
Abby something.
Abby something. Abby normal. Abby normal.
You telling me I put an abnormal brain?
Oh, a classic Gene Wilder freak out. Yeah, very good plot description. Though.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think 2 minutes was the perfect amount of time.
It really was. Because like you said, this movie is pretty linear, pretty straightforward.
It's old fashioned in that way. It's very much like an old fashioned plot structure.
Yeah, I thought we arrived in Transylvania rather quickly. There wasn't too much explanation or too much like quelling on his end to be like, should I go? Am I a Frankenstein? Am I not gonna do that? But it's just like the guy gives him his thing from his grandfather's estate, and he's just like, well, I guess I'm going, and he just goes, which is fine because it just for plot's sake, time's sake, because this movie's like a tight hour and a half or whatever, and it moved it along, and I guess I didn't really need it. But yeah, overall, I thought it was fun. I want to talk about the cast specifically. So obviously, we mentioned that Gene Wilder definitely is the standout. Is he wearing eyeliner? Is he wearing mascara? Probably, but damn it, he looks good doing it.
His hair is insane. What's going on there? Is it gray? Is it just frizzy blonde? Who knows?
Yeah. Peter Boyle as the monster. Everyone knows him as Everyone Loves Raymond. That's my only touch point to that movie.
So I knew he was on Everyone Loves Raymond, but I've never actually seen him in that. I've never seen Everyone Loves Raymond. Who is he on Everyone Loves Raymond?
He's like the dad. Yeah, I think he's his dad. Ray
Good for
Romano's
him.
dad. Yeah.
So he has that Raymond money.
He's got that. Well, he's dead, but he had that Raymond money
R.I.P.
and probably the Young Frankenstein money, among other things. But he was a great monster. The zipper on the neck.
I did notice that this time around. Yeah,
killed me. I was like, "What is?" Ryan like nudges me. She's like, "What? Why the zipper? What's it zipping in? Why?" It's so good. Okay, so this is my main MVP is not Gene Wilder, and I know that is a controversial statement to say. My MVP of this whole movie is Marty Feldman.
Oh yeah,
Igor. Incredible fourth wall breaks. He gets all the good jokes. The physical comedy is just perfectly executed.
There's another movie that I don't think Mel Brooks was a part of, but it's called like The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes's like less famous younger brother or something like that.
Okay.
Where Gene Wilder and Marty Feldman team up again as like a version of Sherlock Holmes and a version of Watson. You should check it out. It's pretty funny.
They were a great combination, I gotta say. In terms of just cinematic history, those two played off each other so well.
I would agree. I think from what I've read, this movie was a lot of improvisation on the actors' parts.
Even before it was like a hot thing to do in the movie biz of just improvising lines. I love that.
This is like probably pre-SNL even.
Yeah,
like,
this is 74. When was
74?
like Steve Martin and all? It was around the 70s, I think. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not versed in that. But okay, so yes, Marty Feldman, Igor, MVP. My close second, again, is not Gene Wilder. Close second is whoever played Inspector Kemp.
I'm so glad you said that. So
that guy was amazing.
That guy's name is Kenneth Mars. The only other thing I've ever seen him in, I'm sure he's been in a lot of stuff. He's probably like a prolific comedic actor. Did you ever watch like Malcolm in the Middle in full?
Not in full, but I'm familiar with the show.
So there's a couple seasons towards the end of that show where the older brother, he's out of military school and he goes to work on a ranch out west. And it's that guy who runs it, the guy who plays the inspector.
Whoa.
And he has this like insane German accent the entire time.
Is it the same character? That's amazing.
It'll switch the story to out west where it's him and the older brother. It's kind of hilarious.
But yeah, like all of his gags were incredible. They didn't explain it, and they didn't have to until the very end. But like his wooden arm thing was amazing. The monocle over eye patch, like genius touch.
It's such a great last line where his arm just falls off and he just goes, "Oh shit!"
To the woodyard or whatever it was. Like it's so good. All of his lines were great. Anytime he got like overly passionate and he just got way too German, and everyone was just like, "What?" I wrote it down. Here's it. Yeah, anytime he had to repeat himself was just so good. It's just following in his grandfather's footsteps. Footsteps. So good. I loved it. But yeah, he was my number 2. And then number 3, Gene Wilder.
Gene Wilder's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, Madeline Kahn is up there for me, but I think this was just our first taste into Madeline Kahn comedic culture growing up.
Really?
I don't know if you've seen her in other movies. She is amazing in movies like Paper Moon, which is another black and white one. But also, did you see the movie Clue from the 80s? Are you familiar?
Yeah, yes.
So she plays
Okay.
Mrs. White in that one with the flames monologue. She's great, and I think she's also in Blazing Saddles. And then, so Frau Blucher,
Cloris Leachman, yes.
Cloris Leachman, also from Malcolm in the Middle. I'm making a lot of Malcolm in the Middle connections.
Is this Malcolm? Is this Malcolm Talk?
Should we establish a new segment called
Malcolm Talk?
Malcolm.
Yeah, Talking Malcolm. Yeah,
connect whatever movie we're talking about.
We can as much as we can to Malcolm in the Middle. Yes,
it's a great show. I think she's great in this. It's if you get a chance, you should watch the bloopers for this movie where she starts cracking up. It's pretty sweet.
My touch point for Cloris Leachman is from the what was it, 2006, 2007 Broken Lizard movie, Beer Fest.
What is a Broken Lizard movie?
Broken Lizard is the comedy troupe that brought you Super Troopers.
Oh.
So that same group did another movie a couple years later called Beer Fest, and it's in Germany. It's surrounded around like a beer drinking competition, and Cloris Leachman is in it. And that was my first exposure to Cloris Leachman, and she fucking kills in that movie. And she's the same kind of thing of just like a loosely German woman making dirty jokes, being hilarious.
She's great. I love how we're not saying stuff like the Mary Tyler Moore Show that she's actually known for. Like
Yeah.
Beer Fest and Malcolm in the Middle.
Yes, Cloris Leachman known for Beer Fest and Malcolm in the
Middle. Yeah, I love the Blucher gag with the horses.
That was great.
Something you would never think of. There's also just like several little mini scenes in here that would just like they would be my little monologue if I ever had to like perform something on stage.
Oh yes.
Like, so the scene where they're bringing the body back from the graveyard and they get stopped by the cop, the arm is sticking out, so he has to cover it and use it as his arm while he's talking.
I was dying during that scene. It is so clever, and you don't see those kinds of movies anymore. So I wanted to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
This is obviously in a Hollywood, a movie, continuum of yesteryear. Comedies aren't like this anymore. They are not played in the pocket as much as this is. Mm-hmm. They're usually played for cheap laughs or for something that can easily get dated, whereas this is, can live on years later and still leave people in stitches.
Yeah, it's a 70s movie throwing back to the 30s, and everything is so heightened that it's lived on through the decades.
And I love that. And I hate that, Hollywood's kind of like lost that. Comedy is now kind of just baked into whatever other major genre. Mm-hmm. It is like, it's hard to make a good comedy. And I don't know if I've ever seen one in recent years of just like a full stop comedy or parody or anything like that in a long time.
Yeah, we definitely don't have as many like mainstream parody movies. And I also feel like you couldn't really make a comedy successful these days without like some sort of music element in it, which this film like doesn't really have. This film just has like a very classical score going on in the background and like classic horror almost. Mm-hmm. And then obviously like the violin theme that kind of recurs throughout.
Yeah.
And then a fun little sign of its times is the slightly uncomfortable amount of borderline sexual assault in this movie.
Yeah. Oh man, I saw that scene coming, and I was hoping they were going to divert, but nope, they kept it in there.
yeah, you can't really defend something like that where the monster essentially like kidnaps Madeline Kahn's character, and then they engage in sexual activity that doesn't really seem consensual.
Consensual? No, not at all.
Her confidence throughout that scene kind of takes you through it. I would say you're
I
never
think so too.
really worried too much about her being in danger, and
Yeah.
it's obviously all played for laughs, but it's definitely a cringy moment.
Yeah, I could feel my face and body getting hot. I was like, please don't do it. Oh, they're doing it. But yeah, you're like you said, the way that she plays it does carry it and make it
Yeah,
okay in a sense.
and then
And then the payoff of the song is hilarious.
You're just imagining she's kind of like maybe never really orgasmed before or something like that, and she's really feeling it from this monster.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Which is it is what it is. And then yeah, it's a really confusing ending scene as well, because they kind of redo it where so like you were saying in the plot description, Gene Wilder, as the scientist, gives part of his brain to the monster, and then you realize towards the end that part of the monster went into him as well, and maybe his penis got bigger. I'm not entirely sure.
Is it just through brain fluid? Is it mind over matter at that point, or was there a follow up procedure? I don't know. And these are the questions I have.
Follow up procedure, yeah.
Yeah, very specific, and it seemed to be successful. And I love that out of all of this, the journey that we get through, the storytelling, the character arcs, and the homages, the lasting ending joke of this movie is a dick joke, and I think that is a hats off. What job well done, Mel Brooks. So you were talking earlier about like monologues, and if you were ever to read on stage, for a part, when I was watching the monologue Gene Wilder does, the Ascension scene when he's plugging up the monster and they're going up, that scene, like for some reason, like I was just like, this is fucking awesome. This is really rad.
Shakespearean at some point.
It's so good. I wrote it all down and I want to recite it for you. I'm not going to get like hyper into it, but just like we'll break it down line by line. So, from that fateful day when stinking bits of slime first crawled from the sea and shouted to the cold stars, I am man. That's awesome. First of all, I was like, okay. I'm waiting for jokes the whole time that he's doing this, and not one happens, and I'm just like, okay, I'm still in the moment.
I think it's credit to Gene Wilder. I'll let you go on with it, but I think it's credit to him that I know we don't want to break the mics at this point, but he is like screaming his
at
lungs
the top
out
of his lungs.
These lines.
They're so good.
And that happens so often in this movie, where he will just go from a regular speaking voice and then start screaming as loud as he possibly can.
He goes ham. All right. So now we are, from the primordial ooze, we are now crawling out, screaming at the stars, I am man. Our greatest dread has always been the knowledge of our own mortality. Existential, I love it, super cool. But tonight we shall hurl the gauntlet of science into the frightful face of death itself. Oh, that's so cool. I want a t-shirt of that. Tonight we shall ascend, and as he says this, like that's when the platform rises. Tonight we shall ascend into the heavens. We shall mock the earthquake. Oh, that's so cool. We shall command the thunders and penetrate into the very womb of impervious nature herself. So cool. Like you said, it's Shakespearean, and I tried like hell to dig through and find out like anything about this monologue. Like, is this in reference to something? Is this in Mary Shelley's book? Is this in the original Frankenstein? I couldn't find anything. So hopefully maybe an avid listener, maybe one of our friends in Brussels who has been listening. Shout out to Brussels.
We love Brussels.
We love Brussels. Maybe someone can help us out there, because I think it's so cool. I want to know, like, did Mel Brooks write that? Like, did Gene Wilder come off with that off the top of his dome? Probably not. I bet it's in reference to something, but it's awesome.
yeah, if we were to do like some sort of like close reading on the high level character arcs happening in this movie, it's there's a lot of irony at play here, because it starts out with Gene Wilder's character as the descendant of this long line of basically mad scientists who's trying to, walk an honest line in science and be kind of like an actual scientist and
Yeah.
a modern man of the world. And the second he gets back to his
His
roots
roots,
in
yeah.
Transylvania, he he's kind of descends into this mad version of science, while also, like you're saying, professing to ascend to this deeper level, this higher layer, actually, of science, when really it's something that's more within his own blood and more instinctual, as opposed
Yeah.
to like man-made technology and science. It's really just like nature versus science happening,
Yeah.
all in this same movie.
It's so great. I love that. And so like stripping away some of like the outlandish gags and comedy parts of it, like, and that's what I said, like at the top, like this still plays to me like as a horror movie. It still has the main elements of the original story and the original movies, and that's why I dug it so much. Being a spooky boy, a spooky bitch myself. But yeah, like you said, the whole kind of story arc is in that monologue of starting from slime, from nothing to just yeah, what is it? Yeah, penetrating to the very womb of nature and just like creating this abomination. But then he takes it on stage and they play "Puttin' on the Ritz," and that's all she wrote about that, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I think some of the best comedic moments of this film are when they like portray Gene Wilder as some like incredibly sexy, like very like proficient man of the world who all these women are attracted to, and then they kind of contrast that with these incredibly weird and dumb moments, like when they're trying to figure out how the secret passageway behind the bookcase works, where he's like,
Yeah,
obviously we have to remove this book here and nothing happens. Then they take the candle and he's like, I'll just block the bookcase with my body.
Proceeds
It's
to
one of my
crush him.
favorite like
Yeah.
visual gags of the movie is him like spinning around and then rushing towards the crack in the wall where it just slams into him. And then he's got like the little high pitched voice.
Oh, it's
Um
great. It's great. You've seen that kind of stuff emulated
hmm.
by modern comedians, Jim Carrey and other physical comedians try to capture that same kind of honesty, and it's hard to. I think it's hard to.
Yeah. The Jim Carrey movies are probably closer to a modern version of this, I would say. But
Yeah,
again,
when we
they,
come to Christmas season, and we inevitably, maybe we'll talk about the Grinch. I don't know. We'll find some sucker who hasn't seen it, but it's a similar kind of thing of just like letting the actor go ham and just going bananas on
yeah.
screen.
Yeah, there's a certain like earnestness to this movie, and Marty Feldman's character Igor kind of breaks the fourth wall at certain points. So there's kind of a wink at the camera, but you get a lot more of that, I would say, in modern comedies where they don't want to be too serious about how comedic they're being.
Yeah, I
Um,
thought this struck that nice balance.
but yeah, I would say like if I ever had to perform a one man
If
show,
you want to,
yeah, it would be scenes from this movie, stuff like when he's being like choked out by the monster, and he all of a sudden has to like do charades to mime
Yeah.
out the word sedative, and they start guessing sedative.
Said a give. Like you can't do that. Like that kind of comedy wouldn't play. It wouldn't hit. It would be
Sedative?
hard to do. It would be hard to do these days.
Hmm.
Again, like I said, it's a lost art. This movie is a good, again, time capsule of a forgotten era of just when comedy could be comedy, and I loved it so much. So talking again about just other scenes that just left me dying. Um, Putting on the Ritz was not what I expected. I'd seen some of the imagery of the monster in a top hat.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's from one of the posters or whatever, but like they don't go into much detail of like, why is he wearing a top hat? So, he's at like the showcase or whatever, proving that this monster has, autonomy and can move on its own and go backwards and all this kind of stuff. And then it's like, but now we're going to try something different. And they do the number, and you can see Igor like playing the piano just a little bit off to the side. And I was like, I had no idea this was happening, and it killed me. It was so good.
Yeah, that I would say that is one of the more iconic scenes from the film, is them putting on the Ritz.
Mm-hmm. I almost call this drink "Putting on the Ritz" or just the Ritz, but the sweet mystery of life is better.
How's that drink treating you, by the way?
Real good. I'm all warm and fuzzy on the inside.
Alrighty. Well, yeah. So that's Young Frankenstein. What? I guess coming into this movie, had you seen any of the original like Frankenstein movies? Because I've never really touched on like the ones with Boris Karloff and stuff like that.
Yeah, Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, Dracula, all that kind of stuff. I unfortunately haven't. I am, kind of a in that regard, a poser spooky bitch.
Mm-hmm.
They're streaming somewhere. I think they're on Peacock or something like that. So I need to take the time to, educate myself on the masters of the yesteryear.
Yeah.
But no, I haven't. So I didn't catch, and I'm sure I would be able to catch more references and like, oh, that's like a neat musical motif from the original movie. That's kind of clever, or some of the set pieces that kind of call back to the original. I bet that would be a real interesting payoff.
Yeah, it's heightened music, heightened performances, heightened lights versus shadows. I think it's all calling back to that era of 1930s and 1940s horror films.
Yeah. So, but what I had seen, and I touched on this earlier, of my touch points to Mel Brooks. One of the movies I've seen so many times growing up and even still recently is Men in Tights. And that is my Mel Brooks movie. That's the one I've seen so many times, and I can, quote it. So I knew that, and Spaceballs too. But those were like my main things, like, okay, this is Mel Brooks. It's going to be tongue-in-cheeky, very hammy, lots of shtick, lots of silly gags and stuff like that, and the humor, some of the one-to-one line jokes just being killers.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of knew that coming in, but I didn't expect it to be a lot of that kind of subdued in some ways. When you compare this to Spaceballs or Men in Tights specifically, like that one is like gag after thing after this, sight gag, callback, reference, and scene after scene. But this one is played a little bit more straight, I'm imagining. I bet if I go back and watch some of the originals that we were talking about, I bet it would pay off a little bit more. But
yeah, I think especially with Men in Tights and Spaceballs, there's a lot more breaking the fourth wall. There's a lot more like pop culture references. I'm pretty sure in Spaceballs at one point they have a gag where they're fighting with lightsabers and he accidentally like hits one of the cameramen off screen and then he like falls into this endless pit. And then they both just kind of like look at each other. But with Young Frankenstein, you can definitely tell that they're putting a little bit more effort to like make this movie stand on its own a little bit.
Yeah.
It's more of like a stylistic homage to the movies that came before it, rather than like, how are we going to make fun of this scene for scene movie?
Yeah. Yep. So
which I think is also funny. I really have a special place in my heart for Spaceballs and Men in Tights.
Yep. So now, like I've rounded out, like I said, I've rounded out my Mel Brooks trading card playing list of like, I've seen where he came from in the 70s to pay off some of the stuff he did in the 80s and 90s. Mm-hmm. And it was cool to see those seeds being sown, to see him try some of that stuff. some of the off-site gags, when they're playing darts and he misses and it shoots out the window and you hear "Meow" with the cat, and like it's classic Hollywood comedy. But I loved this. I love this movie. This was fun. This was a good choice to kick off spooky season for me.
Yeah, before we get into the game to kind of close out this episode, do we want to give a quick preview of like what we can expect during spooky season?
Oh my God, Joe, I'm so glad you brought that up because I'm very excited. So the next two entries that we're going to talk about, I'm taking the reins on the next two just because I made Joe be a pushover on it.
You are a quote unquote spooky bitch.
I am a spooky bitch. So for October, we're going to do two entries. The first one we're going to do is Over the Garden Wall, which is an animated feature of sorts. It's really 10 episodes, short episodes, 10-minute episodes.
It's like a mini series.
It's a mini series that was released on Cartoon Network back in 2015, I think. I'll shore up all my numbers and stuff by then. But we're going to do Over the Garden Wall, which to me is a quintessential fall Halloween venture, which is going to be exciting to talk about. And then to round out the week before Halloween, we're going to do 2007, 2008, maybe not. I don't know. Mid to late 2000s, Trick or Treat by Michael Dougherty.
Which is like an actual scary movie.
It is an actual scary movie. It is, I can't think of the term right now off the top of my head, where it's different vignettes that kind of play over like an overarching story.
Yeah, I think it's vignettes, like the little episodic storytelling.
Yeah, it's really great. It is my favorite horror movie of all time. It perfectly encapsulates the spooky season to a T, in my opinion. So that's what we're going to be doing in the month of October in the coming weeks. So be on the lookout for those. If those are some of your favorites or you've always wanted to watch, you've always heard of, catch up and get ready for those.
I'm really excited for both. I think I've seen the first episode of Over the Garden Wall, and I never got super into it, but everyone who's watched it that I know of, they always love it.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really fun and pretty animation style. And then Trick or Treat, I love a good scary movie.
It's great. Yeah, I think I may want to. Okay, so actually, I may want to watch Over the Garden Wall with you in person. May do that. We'll make a bowl of popcorn.
Oh my God!
We'll take pictures for the gram. We're gonna have an Instagram soon. Spoilers, by the way, listeners and watchers, we'll have an Instagram. We'll take some pictures.
Over the Garden Wall.
Yeah, we'll do that. And then the month of October, Regal Cinemas are playing Trick or Treat in theaters. We're gonna go see that.
I think we might also try and see
Scream 2
at some point.
Yep.
For those who don't know, Scream was actually the second episode of this podcast, which we haven't actually released yet. It may be released as bonus content at some point.
Yeah, that's a deep locker in the safe. It's a deep cut.
That's a Disney Vault situation.
Yeah, right. Hands are tied, guys. We can't do anything about that. But yeah, so that's what's coming up in the spooky season to come. But yeah, I loved Young Frankenstein to be a good kickstart for it. I got all the spooky vibes in the right places, and I got a good funny bone tickling out of it.
I'm glad I could give that.
Yeah.
Justin, are you ready for a game?
Yes, I am.
All right, let's get into this and close out this episode. Okay, so the game I have for you, based on Young Frankenstein, I have decided to call How to Build Your Very Own Frankenstein Monster.
Okay,
so here's the situation. You are a mad scientist who has just rediscovered your grandfather's laboratory in deep Transylvania.
Okay, I was about to ask, is this on my mother's side or my father's side?
You can choose.
Okay, because that takes. Okay, all right, go ahead.
Do you have Transylvania roots either way? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Okay. So you have naturally decided to make a quote unquote Frankenstein monster of your own.
Yep.
And as we all know, the Frankenstein monster consists of a head, a torso, legs, arms, and a personality. So
Okay.
those 5 pieces. Do you have that all in your mind?
Head, torso, legs, arms,
And
person.
personality.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so with that in mind, I'm going to give you 5 famous people named Frank, and you're going to tell me, I think you can already guess,
Yeah.
which famous person you would use to fill each of those roles. So
Great.
one guy's legs, one guy's head, one guy's personality, yada, yada.
Okay.
Do you have the rules?
I have the rules. Give me the Franks.
Okay, so your Franks are, number 1, Frank Sinatra. Number 2, Frank Ocean. Number 3, Franklin D. Roosevelt. Number 4, Francis Scott Fitzgerald, famously known as F. Scott Fitzgerald, famously the writer of Great Gatsby. And your 5th one is 3-time Academy Award-winning actress Frances McDormand. Justin, tell me how you will build your Frankenstein monster.
Great. I have all these here. I'm going to connect the dots, and let's go on hold, and I'll come back after a minute,
All right.
and we'll talk about it. All right.
Your call is very important to us. You are currently 4th in line to speak to a representative. Please.
And the representative is here. Here we are. I'm ready.
You ready?
I'm so ready. Okay, so head, torso, legs, arm, personality. The Franks are as follows. We have Frank Sinatra, Frank Ocean, FDR, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Frances McDormand. Admittedly, Joe, I have no idea who the fuck Frank Ocean is.
Frank Ocean
what he looks
is
like.
a singer, songwriter, rapper.
Okay, don't know what he looks like, but I attributed the arms to Frank Ocean's arms. Frank Ocean's arms.
That's a good choice.
Yep. For comedy's sake, FDR legs. Because why not?
Famously great legs. On that ball.
Famously. Head. I went with Frances McDormand.
That is a good choice. Yeah.
Right. Instantly recognizable.
Very expressive.
And then from the neck down, it's just hell, right? Because you got Frank Ocean's arms, FDR's legs. Torso, I attributed to F. Scott Fitzgerald being an author. I imagine he drank a lot.
Yeah.
So he probably had a soft, shitty body. So I thought that would be a hilarious torso to throw on there. And
I think he was really tall and lanky, actually.
Okay, well, that still works. Personality, Frank Sinatra. Just like a booze hound womanizer who can kind of sing pretty well and just loves calling women broads. So if that's coming from the mouth of Frances McDormand, that's instant hilarity. That's my monster.
Going to get her 4th Oscar.
Yeah, that's my Frankenstein's monster.
Justin, thank you for playing How to Build Your Very Own Frankenstein Monster. I'm going to give you an 8 out of 10 across the board.
Yeah, I may open up Photoshop to make a cursed image. If we have a brave listener who also wants to partake and do that as well, that would be fun too.
Please do, and please tell me how you figure out how to get an image of FDR's legs.
He had polio, right?
I believe he did. Yeah.
Okay, so
famously in a wheelchair.
Yeah. So that's good. All right.
Okay. Justin, thank you for watching Young Frankenstein with me. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I always take pleasure whenever I get the chance to watch this movie.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to spooky season on
Me too.
the Uncultured Cinematic Universe.
Me too. I can't wait. So yeah, check us out on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Just search the Uncultured Cinematic Universe. We'll be there putting out good shit for you regularly. This has been fun. Joe, I appreciate it as always. Take care, y'all.
Bye.